I'm sorry, go on, who are you?
No, that's, I don't know anymore. I'm a lot of people.
Most famous probably for Salacious Crumb from Return
Most
of the Jedi.
famous for Salacious Crumb, Return of the Jedi.
Those of you who don't know.
And then on to after that came the promos.
But let's talk first about Salacious Crumb. How
Are you
did
going to
get
interview
more?
me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, you want me to just, you can do it right, sit down.
No, I want you to interview me.
Okay, I'll be
because
like
I don't
Johnny
know what the
Carson.
heck
I'll
to
be like
talk
Johnny
about.
Okay.
Okay, and
So
then
how's-
we'll let them. Yeah, hi Johnny.
You want to start us all over again? Ladies and gentlemen, Mark
I always wanted
Dodson.
to be on the Tonight Show. Always wanted to be on the Tonight Show with Johnny
You'd be
Carson.
switched, you'd be here, I'd be there.
I grew up with Johnny Carson.
You'd be here and I'd be there for Johnny
Oh,
Carson.
you're right. Does that seem more like you guys? Hi, all right. Hey, go ahead.
You want to get this,
man?
I'll sit right next to him.
Right, right.
You're not getting paid. So, you're Salacious Crumb. How do you get the job? How did you get into voice acting? If I'm not mistaken, that was your first voice acting.
That was my first that I scored. The first thing, what happened was, I was down in Los Angeles. So I moved out to LA from St. Louis, Missouri, right out of high school in 1978. And I went to LA and I wanted to be a producer, director. That's what I wanted to do. And I was willing to start wherever I had to start. Didn't grow up in a situation where I would be able to go to college or anything. And I always wanted to be in the film business since I was about 10 years old is when I started. Really wanted to be in it. My parents were very much into movies and things, so we went to movies together. And I guess I'll go back and kind of start there.
You start with the dinosaurs and we're
All the way to the dinosaurs. So I was totally into it. I loved Chaplin, like when Charlie Chaplin, when they did I remember the Art Museum when I was about 10 years old, did a retrospective of Chaplin and showed his movies every weekend. The Great Dictator, City Lights, all these, I just love that stuff. So I was raised around all that, a family that really appreciated entertainment in general.
Great Dictator. Great.
Great Dictator's a great Chaplin film.
Google Great Dictator speech on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
It is that speech which is, it sends chills down my spine. It's from Charlie Chaplin, the son of film actor.
Right,
It's one of the greatest speeches.
It was just sound. It was a sound movie. At the end, he gives a great speech. Great speech.
It just
about
It just floors you.
So, anyway, so I went out there and ended up hooking up with Lucasfilm, and shortly thereafter, this would have been in 1980. I was doing anything that I could to feed myself. Worked in a Western workshop.
You had the mustache.
I had the mustache then. I was always into country music and all that. Anyway, got the job as a gopher, and then they decided they were moving everybody up to Marin County. They didn't need gophers. They had plenty of that. ILM was already there. You guys know, like when I say these things, you guys know Industrial Light and Magic that does all the special effects for Lucasfilm. So I said, well, I really want to go, and I'll do anything. And they said, well, we're looking for, or they're looking for laborers and carpenters right now to build Skywalker Ranch. So I said, and it was kind of like, if you're there, something might open up in production. So I said, I'll do it. I'll go up there and be a laborer. I said, I can carry lumber, I figured I could learn that pretty easy. And I did. And so I went up there and all of a sudden, Ben Burt, who's the sound guy for George, he was looking for voices, or for a voice. And I was goofing around one day, actually, walking along, carrying board and cleaning up, and just because I was bored and walking around, I started doing Popeye, and I was walking through, and I'm like walking like Popeye, and I'm doing that, and the one guy's like, "That's a pretty good Popeye. You should let Ben know that you do other voices." And I said, "Yeah." So I let him know. So then he was looking for a voice. And
Ben Burke, the
Ben Burke,
sound designer.
the sound designer, Ben Burke, who did all the sound stuff. Anyway, he had me come into his studio in San Anselmo, where he was working, and to try out for this voice. And there was no script. He just said, say be good, and you're an alien, and they don't tell you exactly what's, because it's all top secret. Anyway, I tried out. This was my first audition, and I didn't get the part. But when we went to the screening of the movie, I still didn't know what I was working on. Well, we went and saw E.T. with the company. Everybody screamed it in Marin. And E.T. came on and said, and I remember going and telling somebody, I don't remember, but there was some kid's name that he had me keep saying over and over. Well, when I went and saw it, and I'm like, that's what I was trying out for. Wow. I didn't get the part. So that was my first audition ever. It was for E.T. So but Ben said that he was impressed with what I had done, and that he would call me when he had some other things, talk to me after the screening. And so he did. He called me in to audition for Admiral Akbar. And I was green. I'm not an actor. I wasn't, and if you guys know, Admiral Akbar has big words. And I'm very nervous. I'm so nervous. This is how Salacious came along. It's a long story. So I go in there, he gives me the script, and it's like, the Death Star, and all these huge words, and I am so nervous. I'm holding the copy, and I'm like shaking. And Ben can see, and I'm like, Ben, I'm so nervous, I can't do this. He's like, that's all right, relax. I said, just let me walk away, let me shake this off. Because I was literally shaking. I was so scared. And I walked away, and I went, okay, all right, let's try it. He's like, oh, wait a minute. I got a creature that's going to work for. And that's how Salacious Crumb, that's how that happened. And he said, do that. I'm like, that? He says, yeah, just give me some more laughs like that. So I started, I started doing all these laughs. And he said, okay, I'm going to describe a scene. And he said, you're kind of a monkey, kind of a rat, kind of a bird. And he said, now, you're little, and you just snuck into a giant's castle. So give me some sounds in that voice like you're sneaking into a giant's castle. So I started, I'm doing all these kind of things. And then he says, okay, now you just saw a big chunk of cheese. So I'm excited, there's cheese. And he says, now you've got the cheese. So I grabbed the cheese, doing sounds. And then he says, now the giant sees you, and you're scared. And it sounds for that. He said, now the giant's chasing you. And so I'm running, and now he's caught you, and he's mad. And that's the scene when he ended up using. I went, I'm just making up, That was after he ended up using that part when he told me, you're grabbed by the giant and you're mad, and you wanted to put you down. And that's what I was doing from that, where if you remember where R2 shoots Salacious Crumb after I pulled C-3PO's eye out. So that's what that was. It was all gibberish, And somebody asked me one time in an interview, what are you saying there? And I said, actually what I'm saying is, I want my cheese, leave me alone. Because that's what that's what it was. That's what I'm thinking, when I did it. So anyway, long story, but that's how I got in. That was my first thing was that. And then I thought, well, I'll go ahead and put together a demo tape and send it to my favorite studios. I was just like Disney. I grew up on Disney and Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera. So I put together a demo tape of a lot of different voices, and I was able to put on my resume Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, which looked really good. And that, I sent out my tape. I did a lot of, I did a pine read, like a low me down, or so, I don't know, I'm a pine read, and I did, I don't remember all the voices, man. I did lots of, like the goofy, I did kind of a goofy voice, and I did Salacious and sent that to the big studios, to like say Disney and those guys. Not really thinking, I was like, we'll see. And started getting replies by phone in those days. And I'd get a call and say, hi, this is Elena Engel with Disney. I'm like, yeah. I sent her a tape. She said, yeah, you've got some really good stuff here. I think you can be able to use it. I was like, I guess I'm going to do this, you know. So that's how it started. And then Gremlins, the guys that, so I'll shut up and let Johnny.
No,
Go ahead.
My next question's going to be, okay, so you did Salacious Crumb, and all of a sudden, new movie, which came out in 84.
84.
It's a year after Return of the Jedi.
A year after Jedi.
And then what happens there?
Yeah, well, what happened there was,
Did you just call me Johnny?
yeah, Johnny, yeah. Johnny. Stay in character. Let's see. What happened was, Tony McVeigh sculpted Salacious Crumb. And Chris Wayless is the monster, they call him Monster Makers. He's the monster maker that made Salacious Crumb after the sculpting by Tony. These guys are tight, good friends. They worked in Marin. So when we screened Return of the Jedi, I went to the screening, it was in San Francisco, cast and crew. And afterwards, a friend said, hey, you need to meet the guys that made Salacious. And it was Chris Wayless and Tony McVeigh. So we talked and exchanged phone numbers and said, hey, let's get together for lunch. So we went to lunch. And I remember saying, boy, wouldn't it be great if there was, they do another movie and there's a whole planet of Salacious Crumbs? Very self-serving. I was thinking, that'd be some work. And they're like, well, of course, they're the that made them. They're like, yeah, that'd be great. You know? Well, lo and behold, I don't know, less than a year later, I get a phone call from Chris. Hey, Marcus, Chris, what's going on? He says, remember when you said, wouldn't it be great if there was a planet of Salacious Crumbs? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, there is. And he says, and the planet is Earth, and they're called Gremlins now. I'm like, kid, what's going on? He said, well, we're working on this movie Gremlins with Spielberg, and Steven actually asked us who the voice was for Salacious. And we told him it's you, and he said, do you think you can get a hold of him? And they said, yeah, we've got his number. He said, well, I think the Gremlins should sound like Salacious.
Steven Spielberg?
That's what I said. Steven Spielberg. And we said, yeah, he asked who did the voice for Salacious. They loved him. Yeah. And I was blown away. I was just like, so he's like, so, how are the kids in here? Yeah. So, because he says, so do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah. Are you kidding? Of course. Yeah. Well, he said, well, here's the sound guy. Call Mark Mangini at the sound. Here's his phone number. Call him. He's expecting your call. So I called him. He said, yeah, when can you come down? I was still in Marin. When can you come down? As soon as you need me. And he said, okay, can you be down next week? Yeah, no problem. They set up a flight and everything and booked me, and I flew from San Francisco down there. And next thing I knew, I was working with Joe Dante, and Steven Spielberg stopped by and while we were on the ADR session.
He was the executive producer, correct?
He was the executive, yeah. He came in to see what's going on. You know, he stopped by and let us know he was a part of it. Next thing I know, I'm in Gremlins, you know. And Howie Mandel is Gizmo. So Howie and I worked together. And at that time, Howie was a stand-up comedian, you know. And of course, I knew Howie. I knew who Howie Mandel was. You know.
Did he shake hands?
No, he didn't.
He
did. And it flipped me out because I actually went after, because I went to shake his hand, he did this.
Oh, so the
I
pound
guess
was
you
even
all know
around
now.
back then?
Yes, even back then. He wouldn't shake my hand. And I'm not used to, I grew up blue collar, man. You meet somebody, you give a strong handshake, you know, look him in the eye. And I go to, and he does this, and I was like, this wasn't done back in the early 80s. You know what I mean? People didn't do this. And then he started it. I think he might have. But, so I did that, and then look, when he went away, I went to Joe Dante, and I'm like, "What's with him?" He's like, "What do you read?" I said, "We didn't shake my hand." I was hurt. He said, "Oh no, he does it to everybody. He's a germaphobe. He doesn't want to."
That's because he played a doctor on TV.
Oh,
Did he
okay.
play a doctor on TV?
Saying elsewhere.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
But now everybody knows about Howie Mandel and that, right? That's like common knowledge that you won't get it. He's a germaphobe.
Adam Weston's like that.
I heard out.
He's right there.
like that too. He's
Bang on. You go to the wall.
Bang on.
No, seriously, this is the end of it. He's right there.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yes, I'd love to be a villain back there. But so that's how it's run.
Do we have anybody in the audience with a question for Mr. Dodson?
What can you tell us about the boss eating rounds?
The bar scene in Gremlins. That was fun. That was one of the first scenes that we did. We did what's called ADR, and you're in on a big sound. You're on a big sound stage with a big movie screen, and you're watching the movie, and they've got the microphone, and you step up to the mic. You know, I would be the screen, and I stand there and watch. And they have beeps. Let me just give you a little idea of how we do it first. Depending on how fast, there's 3 tones, they give 3 beeps. Depending on how fast it is, like if I'm gonna go, then they go beep, 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 and then talk. And I'm matching to the picture, the mouth movement. So it gives me, if it's a faster scene, you know, then it's beep, 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 and then you jump in there and start and try to do things to make it fit. You do it over and over until they feel like, okay, that's close enough, we can slide it this way or that way, you know. Well, so the bar scene came up, and it was early in the deal. To be the Gremlins, for some reason, I had to take my shoes off. I had to take my socks off. I was barefoot. I was in my blue jeans and a t-shirt. And
You had to for your own preparation, or is that what they wanted?
no, I personally was like, I feel, and I'll do it. I was just like, I gotta become these guys, you know? So I was like, and I'm like, all right, I take off my shoes, because they're barefoot, you know? And so I'm like, you know, I'm up there and I'm, you know, well, we get to the scene, the bar scene, and I'm being a method actor. I said, you know what really helped this scene? If somebody get me a Budweiser. St. Louis boy, of course, I always have a Bud. They're like, would it really? I said, yeah, man, I'd really get into it if I had a Bud. And they're like, okay. 5 minutes later, they come in with a case of Budweiser. And they're like, your beer's here. And I'm like, what? A case of cold Budweiser. They'd sent somebody out off the back lot, down the street, get him. I mean, I was blown away. That's really fun stuff when you're a guy like me. That you say, I could use a Bud. And next thing you know, here's a case. You know?
It was like you were 5 years old.
So I would pop, you know, pop the beer, and we're doing the bar scene. And I will admit, doing that bar scene, I drank about half of the beer, you know, and a couple other people in the studio were like, can I have a beer? And then they're like, yeah, go ahead, you can have one, you know. And got feeling like I was in a bar, and I did the bar scene. And I had my half a beer before I did it. And then by the time I was done doing the bar scene, I finished my beer, you know, and I'm holding it, and I'm doing all the crazy stuff that the Gremlins did, you know, but I don't know. It was just kind of fun. I think that's, you know, yeah, method actor. Method actor. So far from that.
So you definitely did Stripes. And
Stripe Stripe I did some of, and Don Messick did a lot of Stripe. Because they would have us pick up stuff, you know. I am the majority of the Gremlins. Don just did some of Stripe, but like like I was saying, flying on the fan, that's me screaming, wow, 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 you. I go across the one that jumps on Santa. The one in the mailbox, the one, you know, I'm just most all of them. And then Gremlins 2. I'm Daffy. You saw Gremlins 2. I'm Lenny. I'm George.
What about Mohawk? Isn't he like the main bad one, or the one that's
And then that's where Don came in for
Oh.
Mohawk. Yeah, Mohawk. Okay. And I'm the mischievous Mugwump.
Who did the voice for the smart gremlin where he drank the brains?
The brain gremlin. That was. There's a great story with that. Tony Randall. You guys remember Tony Randall? Of course. Okay.
Okay.
You know, Tony Randall was totally against smoking. And when he used to go on the Tonight Show, he was a favorite guest with you, John. You recall?
Oh, yeah, he's good. I love him.
and he used to always talk about how much he was against smoking. Well, he was the brain gremlin. And the idea with the studio was that Tony Randall would go around and go on the Tonight Show with Johnny and do the whole circuit and talk about gremlins. And he did, you know, the brain gremlin kind of, who we talk about, you know, he kind of right in there. Yeah, you know, what are some of his lines were great, you know, most of them civilized.
Yeah, civilized.
Yeah, something about me, yeah. Well, when Tony saw that he came in to do his sinking the picture, and when he saw his gremlin, if you recall, the brain gremlin smokes. Remember? When he saw that brain gremlin smoke, he came unglued. He said, "I will not be a character that smokes." This is true. And they said, "Well, you're signed to this, and we need you to do this, Tony." He had a fit, and the bottom line was he did end up doing the voice, but he refused to publicize the gremlins. He refused to go on the circuit and get the publicity out there and go on the talk shows
Is he uncredited?
because the brain gremlin smoked. And I was like, "You're a gremlin, dude. You know, I mean, you do more than smoke, you know." But he really had a thing about smoking. Oh, he's in the credits.
He's in the credits?
He's in the credits, but he would not go and do the talk show circuit. And that was going on when Howie and I were in doing the looping, and Joe Dante, the director, and Mike Fennell, they were talking about it. You know, they were a little bit upset. They were a lot upset. But yeah, because he was there. He was going to be the big guy to get out there. He was great on the talk show circuit.
Do we have one more quick question? Because we got two other Star Wars guests coming out.
Do you ever work with Frank Welker at all?
With Frank, yeah, on Gremlins and Gremlins 2. Frank is great. You guys, Frank Welker is every ghost and bad guy on Scooby-Doo. Remember Scooby-Doo? And of course I grew up with Frank. You know, Frank's probably 20 years older than me. He's got to be in his 70s now. And he's great, does the greatest Bob Hope impression you've ever heard, which any impersonator will tell you Bob Hope is impossible to do. And guess what? Frank Welker sounds just like Bob Hope when he does it. And just a super nice guy. Yeah.
All right, we're going to cut off here. We've got two more Star Wars actors coming out with Mark, as always.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you.
All right, before I call out our next guest, I just want to say that